Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me if we had technical issues. We've been having it all day.
Yeah, weather can do all that kind of crazy crap to you. If we have issues, we have issues. I do not have my Comrex backed up, so.
All right, give me 1 second. Let me step out. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. Woo, I can see. Yeah, Brian, that was a good show last night. Really good show last night.
All right, they were having issues in the knock. I had to make sure that they were prepared.
Gotcha. Listen, if I happen to drop because of an audio connection, just give me 5 seconds, okay? And I'll just come right back in through another Opal online, okay?
All right. Which Opals do you have?
Well, I'm not sure. I can give you the link. Mine reads Opal 2, but I'm not sure that's which unit am I on right now?
You're on Opal 2 currently.
That's the one I have, Opal 2. I'll come back in on Opal 2.
Okay, yeah, just drop from it and then come back. About 15 from 30.
Sounds good. Sausage making going on, guys.
It's like the weather just drives everything crazy. 30.
This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. Because they don't want me to, that's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the gunbroker.com studios on the Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone.
They're never going to stop us here.
It's 2021, and we're in a new decade. Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Oh, man. Welcome inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, the gunbroker.com studios on the Crossbreed Holsters microphone. Every bit of this being brought to you and presented to you around the country, live streaming on dozens of radio stations by X Insurance. Make sure to check out xinsurance.com for your real insurance needs. None of the gimmicky stuff. We don't want to play games with any gimmicky stuff, okay? Protect your life and your freedoms, just like you do your house, your cars, your toys, your lifestyle, your businesses, everything else. X has you covered. Biden made a statement, yes. Oh, before I go to that, and before I go to my guest, fan favorite, we'll go, Andrew Branca, Law of Self-Defense is here. Is always great. Always great to talk with Andrew. Yesterday's Monster Cast was an exceptionally good program. If you missed it, the podcast went up last night. Make sure to go and get it. Many thousands of you do. I think the podcast is now, I forgot, I've lost count. Hundreds of thousands of downloads per month. But yesterday's show was good. It was a little bit mixed up with AAR Hawkins coming on first, followed by Alan Gottlieb, founder of the Second Amendment Foundation. But that hour was so informative, as it always is. And then the second hour with Carl Jackson from the Carl Jackson Show. Here was what was cool about that. Carl's a really good friend and just an outrageously good talk radio host. He comes from Compton. He's lived the life. He and I have joked before over personal conversations about him sitting in the criminal's den, discussing criminal stuff when he was a kid with criminals and guns in the same room when he was 8 years old, 9 years old. Now, he's changed his life around big time. In fact, how much so? After he got off the air with me last night, he began preparation last night and this morning because he guest hosted, and filled in for Dennis Prager today. So that's a big deal, all right? That's who we hang with here. Gotta love that. And then, of course, hour 3 was a pretty raucous roundtable, and all 3 participants, Neil, Justin, and Brad, brought it, as they always do. There's a statement by the President of the United States 3 years after the Parkland shooting. I'll probably go into that maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday in greater detail, because we're going to watch the prediction from Alan Gottlieb unfold. We think we're going to start seeing some movement, some motion from the White House, the executive pen, this week, as they never let a good crisis, meaning the 3-year anniversary of Parkland, go to waste. For now, let's flip over to Andrew Branca, The Law of Self-Defense. TheLawOfSelfDefense.com is the website. Andrew, how the heck are you, brother?
I'm doing awesome, Mark. Thanks for having me on again. It's always appreciated.
It's so much fun to have you on the program. We've got a little slider going on behind us here where we've got, it's not an ugly mug. You're a pretty good-looking guy. You wear a suit really well, man. I got to hand it to you. I guess that's a prerequisite for an attorney, isn't it? You got to wear a suit really well.
Yeah, an expensive suit.
An expensive. Yep. Yeah, can't go in a cheap off the rack and expect to get a good hourly wage. But then flipping behind that is the book, The Law of Self-Defense, The Indisposable Guide to the Armed Citizen, and it is. It's one of the best reads out there. Andrew, before we even get started today, tell listeners about the book, where it came from. I know obviously it was in you. Why did you write it? And what's your favorite part of the book, actually? And we've talked about it before, but I want to know what's your favorite part of it.
Yeah, so I wrote the book, the first edition many years ago, 25 plus years ago. I was a very young attorney. I was a competitive shooter. I'd go to matches and gun shows and gun stores, and people would ask me, Andrew, you're an attorney. Under what circumstances am I allowed to shoot someone or not shoot someone? And, they didn't teach us this stuff in law school. I didn't know the answers to those questions. I had to actually go do the legal research myself. And once I'd done that, I decided, you know what? It'd be pretty good if gun owners generally knew what the actual rules for engagement were for self-defense, not what the internet says or the retired cop buddy says, because most of that's wrong, but what the law actually says. So we wrote the first edition of that book, and it took off, and we've been doing nothing but use of force law ever since.
Use of force law, man. This is a subject I get probably more response when I have you on the program. There's a handful of guests, and you're one of them, that get the most response. People love hearing this stuff. The other one are the happy ending stories, right? Which in many cases wind up in your hands. Happy ending story being the good guy's alive, the bad guy's gone because the good guy had a gun. Yet when we go to, depending on where that person is, maybe an overzealous prosecutor, and while it's still a happy ending story, they still have to fight this battle, which is just nightmarish if it goes the distance, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, it could be absolutely catastrophic. Even when you win, meaning you get acquitted at trial, you lose. You lose everything. You lose all your money, all your resources, all your assets. They make the process itself the punishment. We're seeing that right now in the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Yes.
Where this poor kid did absolutely nothing wrong. I've seen every footage of piece of video there is on this. Seen every statement. I just watched the hour-long preliminary hearing they had on this case. Thank God he's got a good judge on this case. I'm very, very encouraged by that. We can talk about that in more detail if you want in a bit. But Kyle Rittenhouse did literally nothing wrong except act in lawful self-defense. And they've got him now on charges where he could, if convicted, face 200 years in prison. And there's never a zero risk of getting convicted, folks. If you're going to trial, there's at least a 10% chance you'll get convicted, and it doesn't matter how innocent you are.
All right, I actually had Kyle Rittenhouse on the docket here. You can't see it there, but it's actually written down on my sheet to talk with you about that because there are changes. So let's go there. And honestly, I don't care if we spend the hour on it because this is the fastest hour in radio, Andrew. All of a sudden, it's going to be like, wow, the fourth segment already? It's over? Yeah, it happens. So let's just prepare for that in advance. Let's go to Rittenhouse. I wanted to go there anyway. The general gut feeling for the average citizen who has stayed on the right side of the law their entire life and upheld their end of the bargain is there is no way that guy or that girl, or in the worst case scenario, there is no way I get convicted. Look at the guy laying on the ground. Clearly, he's a punk. Clearly, he's a gangbanger. Look at me. I'm wearing a suit. That's my BMW over there. and I have a really nice watch. I have a really good job, and it's going to be obvious to anybody that he was trying to rob me. This is cut and dry. I'm not going to get convicted of anything, or arrested for that matter, am I, Andrew?
Well, unfortunately, the people who make that call are the jurors, and the jurors don't know you. They don't know this other guy. They're not going to hear about his 30 prior convictions or about how upstanding a citizen you are, about the great job you have and the family you raised. And they're not going to hear any of that in the actual courtroom. They're going to hear the pre-orchestrated narrative of guilt from the prosecutor and a narrative of innocence from your defense attorney. And hopefully things would go the right way, but jurors are unpredictable. Your entire audience should think to themselves, how hard do they work to get out of jury duty? Well, who do you think is left?
Oh, that's such a great point. Did you catch that? Now, let me just give a real-life story. I mean, that's what I like about bringing this to my audience, because I've been through these things. I was running a truckload brokerage company, fledgling, just started it years ago down in Tampa, Florida. I was the only employee. My office at the time, we called it the Cave. Didn't have a window. It was one room. My business partner and his family owned the building, and I was thankful to even have the space to run the business. This before the company started to grow. And, you know, honestly, I kept getting, it seems like once you get picked for jury duty, it's like they just keep coming, man. You're on their list now until you get there. And I kept putting it off. I would fill out the little back of the card and send it, by then fax it back in. And nobody hassled me until finally I had some time, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And I'm going to be honest with you. I tried everything I could to get out. My father sat on a jury about 2 years after I got out. And I'll tell you my jury story too, because it's very cool, because I got kicked off because I had a concealed carry permit. They didn't like that. But Andrew, my dad made the same statement you did. He was the foreman. He said, I don't ever want to find myself in this position. It was a white-collar crime. My dad was a businessman his entire life. And this guy got convicted of about 16 of 40 charges he was facing. My dad said, you never want to sit on a jury because, trust me, those people are not your peers, bro. That should frighten everybody, shouldn't it?
It should, absolutely. I would personally be terrified to be on trial in front of a jury.
30.
Too unpredictable. People need to understand there's a certain amount of noise built into the system. This is not like a perfect computer that you put facts and evidence into and you get the perfect answer. It's run by human beings. The decisions are made by human beings, and the best of us are imperfect. And unfortunately, a substantial minority of us are profoundly defective in decision-making capability and easily swayed by the rhetoric of a prosecutor. So you definitely do not want the rest of your life to be in the hands of a jury unless you truly had no other alternative.
Yeah, and that is the last resort. I mean, think about what you heard from Andrew Branca, an expert in this field, an attorney who will gladly take your money to defend you if you have to, telling you don't want to have to go that route. Think about that. Man, oh man. When we come back, I'll finish that brief little story about my jury episode. Then we'll go more back to Kyle Rittenhouse. Don't go away. Well, here's a fun note. I just got the voice audition done for the national television spots. So I will be voicing, and I got it. I won it. So I will be voicing all of the national TV spots upcoming for the Second Amendment Foundation on about 12 or 13 television stations, including Discovery, Weather Channel, Fox, One American News. Oh, gosh, I don't know. I think History Channel, Greg, and a few others, whichever ones I mentioned last night. So that's
for the ones
cool.
that don't get axed.
They won't get axed. Hopefully, I'm going to do. Well, the producers already accepted the second one I sent in, but I'm going to send 3, 4 more, just to give them something else to pick from. But we got the gig. That's pretty cool. Well,
you know how some of those networks are conservative outlets, and so conservative outlets are currently under attack. That's what I mean by the ones that don't get axed.
It's really funny how they take the money, though.
They do, don't they? No refunds.
No refunds whatsoever. No, they won't get axed, believe it or not. The Second Amendment Foundation commercials have been pretty benign. It's interesting to me. It's the only organization running national spots. This is the week Biden's going to make a push for gun control. I feel pretty certain about that. We'll talk about that throughout the rest of the week, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the sanctuary, Second Amendment sanctuary bill that is in Congress currently here in Texas passes, and then anything that's passed federally will be basically null and void.
Yeah,
I forget which bill it is.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with it. There's a lot of that going on right now.
The Texas Firearms Protection Act or something.
Yeah,
I think it's something like that.
They're calling them something similar across the country. Each state's a little bit different, but nonetheless, it's going to be. Those are all going to wind up in court. Every one of them.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 45 degrees here, raining like crap, really crappy day today, and I think we might get black ice tonight. What's the weather like where you are?
10 degrees. 10 degrees, more ice and snow coming tomorrow afternoon. And they're already talking about us having to stay tomorrow through probably Thursday.
You were there all night last night.
Uh-huh. I'm going home this afternoon. As soon as the show's done today, I'm hitting the door.
All right. Good for you.
So I can go home and let my dog out and feed her.
Poor thing.
Yeah. I'm going to bring her back. If I have to stay Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, she's coming up here with me.
Bring a sleeping bag and a couple dog bowls and some biscuits.
Yeah. I got 2 households to check on, mine and my mom, because my mom's currently out of town in California, and so I've got to go check on her place as well.
Ugh. What are we doing time-wise?
We're close 30.
This upcoming segment of Armed American Radio is being sponsored by GunBroker.com, the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell firearms, ammo, and related accessories. That's GunBroker.com. Welcome back to the show.
Blow my head off with the volume in here, man. Turn that down, Mark. What's up with that? GunBroker.com. Check this out. This is amazing. 6 million. 6 million members of GunBroker.com. It doesn't cost a penny to join. Did over $1 billion last year, 6 million members, and over 1 million items available on gunbroker.com, and it's free to join. In large part, that's due to you, Armed American Radio listeners. And I have to give a shout out. My Pillow, this is the craziest thing to me, but it just fascinates me. But we set records over there with the AAR promo code, which means Mike Lindell supports this program and helps us stay on air, and it is just unbelievable how Armed American Radio listeners have stepped up to the plate. It's incredible, but it's mind-boggling to me that we would even be talking about something like that, but we are, and I'll discuss it and give you a little bit better information on that in just a few minutes. But nonetheless, really cool to see your support. All of this, by the way, in the gunbroker.com studios on the Crossbreed Holsters microphone is being presented to you today by X Insurance. Let's not forget that. Got some promos coming up we'll be talking about latter part of the week. Andrew Branca, Law of Self-Defense is the book. lawofselfdefense.com is the website. Andrew, very quick story. I think you've heard this before, but I want listeners to understand. I eventually went to my call for jury duty. I wanted to go. I mean, that fascinates me. I really wanted to go. And I finally made it. Finally had some help when the business was growing. And I finally showed up, and I was the first batch called after we were sworn in about 7 o'clock in the morning. I was in that first lineup. And I was called in, and all they could tell us was it was a self-defense case. The kid was pleading self-defense. 2 people were shot. He was pleading self-defense. He was charged with manslaughter.
And as I got up on the bench and was the first one, I think I was like the third one down the line being questioned, I was asked by the prosecutor if I could be, impartial in a self-defense case like that, knowing that there was a firearm used. And that's all they could tell us. And I said, of course. I said, I'm a concealed carry permit holder, and I absolutely can be impartial to self-defense. At which point, you would have thought I flipped a switch and electrocuted 3 people. Defense attorney, prosecutor, and a judge, because they both rushed to the judge and wanted to take a few minutes to talk with the judge. They had a microphone covered and then turned off, and they were talking and talking and talking. The judge finally came back and dismissed me. So I guess that being a law-abiding citizen with a concealed carry permit and someone who could actually understand the self-defense role probably didn't sit too well with the prosecutor, did it?
Right. Well, there's an old cliche in the law that if you're an attorney and the law is on your side, you pound the law. In other words, you emphasize the law. And if the evidence is on your side, you pound the evidence. And if neither of those is on your side, you pound the table. In other words, you engage in theater in the courtroom. And our prosecutor knows he's got a weak case. That's what he's going to go for. He's going to go for theater in the courtroom. We saw this at level 11 in the George Zimmerman trial.
Didn't we?
And we're going to see the same thing again in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, because they have neither the law nor the evidence on their side, meaning the prosecution. And so we're going to see them pounding the table. And unfortunately, sometimes jurors are swayed by pounding the table. And that's why prosecutors often, when they know they have a bad case and they know they will be pounding the table, they don't want, in particular, knowledgeable or informed jurors in that courtroom. They want jurors that can be swayed by rhetoric.
How scary is that? How scary to know that the one person in that courtroom above and beyond the prosecutor, who would want, you would think, a fair trial, regardless of the outcome, didn't want somebody who they knew was an honest citizen who had passed a bunch of background checks, who absolutely could understand a self-defense. I'm the one they don't want on that jury. That's frightening, bro. That is really, really scary. So let's go to Kyle Rittenhouse now. First off, when I see, we were talking about it last night on the air with Carl Jackson, natural law versus man-made law, okay? You know when something is a natural right. And when you see somebody being prosecuted for a natural right, you can tell in your gut something's wrong with this. This kid defended his life. He had a right to do that. There's no way that they can be prosecuted for that. Yet, lo and behold, they get prosecuted for that. And then you think, well, there's no way he's going to get locked up for that. So you said they had a good judge. What do you mean by that?
Well, people need to understand that a very important role of the court is to act as a filter between the chaos of the outside world and the actual due process of law that we're all entitled to under the U.S. Constitution. So the heat, the emotion, the rhetoric, the anger, the media bias, and the political machinations that are everywhere in the outside world are supposed to be filtered out before the defendant gets in the courtroom. In the courtroom, we have strict rules of evidence and procedure that are supposed to be followed. And that's the only way to get a fair trial, is to exclude all that emotionally driven heat that's everywhere on the outside, especially in these politically energized kinds of cases. But you never know how effective a court's going to do that, because it's all a function of who the judge is. Will the judge demand that trial be run in a rigorous and fair way, or is that judge going to succumb to the political pressures in the environment? Famously, in the O.J. Simpson trial,
I knew it. I knew you were going to say it.
Took a complete dive, completely succumbed to the political pressure, was making media appearances. I mean, the whole thing was a joke. He completely lost control of his courtroom. That could have happened to Kyle Rittenhouse. But the judge in the Rittenhouse case, based on the hour-long hearing I watched just this past week, last Thursday, where he had to engage with the prosecution, with the defense, with family members of those killed by Rittenhouse, who were allowed to be in the hearing, and their legal representatives. This judge is a nuts and bolts, old school, hard due process, fair trial judge, and he slammed any of those attorneys that tried to drive their point home with rhetoric rather than evidence. In fact, the judge himself explicitly pointed out that the media on reporting on this event and on the legal proceedings has been lying about what's happening.
What was the judge's name in O.J. Simpson? What was his name?
You know, it escapes me. It's been so long
I
ago
would
now.
say like EO or
I feel
something.
bad for
Forget his
bringing
name.
him up.
No, I was thinking about him when you were talking. I'm thinking when you were done, I was going to say, famously, the judge in the Simpson case clearly lost control and allowed those O.J. Simpson's defense attorneys to just run roughshod over that trial. And that's exactly what happened.
Sure did.
And that's exactly what happened. And I kind of gathered that you were going to say that wasn't going to be the case with Kyle Rittenhouse. When we come back, I want to talk about some of that, just that gut feeling, that natural law that says, there's no way this kid should be in this situation. And I want to ask you about the couple in Missouri again. And then I want to talk to you about some of the blog posts you have, because I absolutely love some of the titles of them. And we're talking with Andrew Branca, the attorney, the author, The Law of Self-Defense, the indispensable guide for the armed citizen, and that you can find all of that at lawofselfdefense.com. We're going to continue. We've only got another half hour, 2 more segments. The hour flies, so make sure not to change the dial. You don't want to miss any of it. It flies right by. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Andrew Branca as the guest today. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Just so you know, I don't know where this came from, but it was the weirdest thing. While we were on air, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a vicious flash that kind of took me off guard. I glanced over to the studio window on the right side and didn't notice anything. And then split second later, very loud thunder. That was close. So if we happen to have an issue, okay, just letting you know, be prepared. Whatever that, right. I wasn't expecting that at all. That was very freaky.
All right. Yeah, I'll give it a few seconds and then probably go to back up until we can establish connection, then I'll go back live.
If we have a problem.
Exactly.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
I do have redundant system, obviously, so I can switch from one to another if one were to go down. But in a situation like that, both would probably go out.
Yeah, if all the power's out, then you're toast.
Yeah, as long as that internet stays up and the battery backups work, we'd be okay. But that was odd. Yeah, okay, there's unexpected thunder out there, so keep our eyes peeled. All right, what are we looking like?
15. All right, we're close. and 30. I think Parlor may be back. I'm trying to get logged in. All right.
Back to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Welcome back inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, the gunbroker.com studios, the Crossbreed Holsters microphone, all presented by X Insurance. I am sipping some Defender coffee, and it's interesting. This is a backwards mug for me. It's a North American Arms mug, but I'm right-handed, and the logo is only printed on one side. So when I hold up the mug, you get to see a blank side if you're watching on camera, and I get to see the North American Arms logo. But you can trust me when I tell you it's North American Arms. And if you don't have a North American Arms pistol in your repertoire, you're missing out. NorthAmericanArms.com. We'll be talking with them here in the next, probably this Sunday, I believe, where we've got them scheduled. Really fun. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, let's go back to Andrew Branca, Law of Self-Defense. This is a fairly long segment as far as segments are concerned in the fastest hour on radio, Andrew, but I got to go back to Rittenhouse again, because every piece of footage I've seen is, to me, clearly self-defense. And I wonder, what is someone else watching? Is there political bias in the way? Is there hatred of Trump? Is there hatred of guns clouding what they're seeing as this kid is being jumped and attacked, for example, by skateboards? Where do they lose, and how would they feel if it were them or their kid? Are they upset because he was even there with a gun? I mean, what gets into, how does somebody see something so different than we do?
Well, I always hesitate to engage in mind reading, so I don't know what these other people are thinking, except I know that they're not looking at the evidence in the law, because the evidence in the law here are very straightforward. There's literally nothing Rittenhouse did that violates the law. He was clearly, each time he fired that rifle, facing an imminent threat of unlawful, deadly force against him, which is what's required for his use of that AR to be legally justified. He was in flight from these people pursuing him. They were threatening him with deadly force, or at least under the appearance of a threat of deadly force. That's all the justification he needs. You talked earlier, you mentioned natural law. Natural law is usually useful when the formal statutory law doesn't fit the circumstances, but we still feel like it would be an injustice to convict. So we turn to natural law as an alternative defense. But we don't need that here in this case. In this case, Rittenhouse's conduct clearly meets the requirements of Wisconsin law. And anytime you hear people talk about their reasons why Rittenhouse should be found guilty, the reasons are, at least from a technical legal perspective, irrelevant. Like, he shouldn't have gone there with an AR. Well, I don't know. That's a judgment call, I guess, but It's not a crime, and it doesn't do anything to diminish his legitimate claim of self-defense. We shouldn't let 17-year-olds have AR rifles. I don't know. Maybe that's a public policy argument that people could have, but it wasn't a crime, and it doesn't diminish his claim of self-defense. So people tend to throw into the basket of discussion all kinds of irrelevant social public policies, or facts that are irrelevant, or facts that are made up, that are just fabricated, like he's some kind of white supremacist. There's literally zero evidence of any of that. And that misleads them from the truth in this particular case. Now, maybe they want to be misled, in which case it's easy to pull them in that direction. Unfortunately, when the media reports only these half-truths and lies in this case and represents them as if they're an accurate portrayal of how the law applies to this event, it misleads the general public into believing, well, he must have done something wrong, or there wouldn't be this much smoke. Folks, as an expert, I'm telling you, he did nothing wrong.
Well, that begs two questions. First off, let's take media. When the media is intentionally misreporting something, and that gets proven in court based on the outcome of a case,
number one, why is there no legal recourse against the media allowed, or is there? Number two, let's take, for example, recourse when he's acquitted, which I feel fairly confident he will be. That means he was wrongfully prosecuted. Why can't he seek his money back to right his life for everything he's had to go through if, in fact, he is acquitted? And why can't he seek millions from the media who intentionally tried to sway a jury because they don't like guns and they're biased and they don't think he should have been there? Why, how come, why don't we have that in this country? Wouldn't that end some frivolous lawsuits?
Well, with respect to the prosecutor, prosecutors effectively have complete immunity for everything they do in their office. There are rare exceptions. They happen about once every 100 years. So forget about the exceptions. Whatever prosecutors do, they have immunity from being held accountable for. The only way to hold the prosecutor accountable is to elect a different prosecutor. And unfortunately, most people have no idea who their prosecutor is or when the election was. They're simply not at all invested in it. Most prosecutor races are won or lost by a few hundred, maybe a few thousand votes, which also means, by the way, if a guy like George Soros or any of his groups comes into your town and wants to elect a prosecutor, they just drop $1 million. They get 10,000 votes, which completely overwhelms the legitimate candidates for that office. And Soros has himself another prosecutor.
See St. Louis.
See
St. Louis.
Small vote elections, exactly what happened in St. Louis, and unfortunately many other urban centers for the most part.
All right. Well, Andrew,
so you can't do anything to that. With respect to the media, people try. In theory, you can sue the media, but the threshold is so high that it's almost impossible. I mean, in the Zimmerman case, NBC and other news outlets literally fabricated evidence about the case. I mean, they edited 911 call transcripts and recordings. They changed, they modified photographs. The things they did were unbelievably egregious. But when Zimmerman tried to hold them accountable in civil court, those cases were dismissed. So it's simply almost impossible.
All right. Well, again, begs the question, at least I want to bring it up. Why? Why can't a prosecutor be held accountable when something is so egregious? Well, let's go. Zimmerman is one. This was a political persecution. Anybody with any clear mind knew this. The lies coming from all sides here were unbelievable. How come Al Sharpton can't be held accountable? How come NBC? Why don't we lower that threshold? What do we have to do to lower that threshold? And why does that proceed? Because I could make the argument that a prosecutor should never be in an elected position because politics are what leads to this crap going on in St. Louis and what we're seeing with Rittenhouse. I mean, I could make these arguments all day long. Is there a better way to do this?
I don't know. Now we're getting into kind of public policy arguments that I can't claim any particular expertise in. I can tell you that I've been in jurisdictions where judges were elected, and I've been in jurisdictions where judges were appointed, and neither one is less political than the other. At least with an election, the polity, the people voting, at least theoretically, have some option. Closer to hand than electing some distant politician who's a governor, typically, who's then going to appoint your judge on your behalf. Those are typically political hacks, the ones that are appointed. So it's a very difficult situation. And prosecutors do legitimately need a lot of discretion to do their job properly. I genuinely believe that. And unfortunately, it appears to me, based on my 3 years experience in the law, that the only real solution is to put in those positions good people. Don't try to make a system that's going to enforce good decision-making on bad people. That's never going to work. You need a system that has good people in it to begin with, to make good decisions, reasonable decisions, prosecutorial decisions not based on politics and media coverage and personal political advantage, but based on the actual law and evidence in the particular case.
And a lot of that is wishful thinking and unicorn riding. I'm going to go to the unicorn store and buy one. Because here's what I'm talking about, not to you, Andrew, but in real life, because I can take you now to any Democrat-controlled city in this country, and we can go through case after case after case of Democrat prosecutors being elected by the same people that elect the Democrat mayors decade after decade after decade, all gun grabbers,
30,
all coming from the same political spectrum, and we see the nonsense that we see. Kyle Rittenhouse, we see it with the McCloskeys, and I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on in every city. Remember, before we go to the break, I told you the segment was going to fly by, didn't I? Coming up on the fourth segment already. But remember, when I told you, I mentioned it again last night. You can't ever forget it. You show me an American city in decay, and you can define decay any way you want.
whether it's legal system, whether it's slums, whether it's whatever it is, whatever you define it as decay, you show me an American city in decay, and I'm going to show you an American city run by Democrats at every single level for decades. Decades. You cannot prove me wrong, and if you
20.
want the bet, I will absolutely take your money. It's impossible to prove me wrong. We'll be back right after this. Miss Dow, where's your truck key? So my wife just walked off with my truck. That just happened.
Your wife just walked off with your truck.
My wife just walked into the studio, reached over the cameras, through the lights, said, I need the truck key. I have to go to work. And she took the truck key, and off she went with my truck. My daughter's not here she likes to call it her car, but it's my car that she drives since she was 16 that I bought for her. She's not here. My son works at a grocery store. He's leaving at, I think he's probably already gone. So I have no car. That just happened. No, there is a car in the driveway, but the battery was dead. It needs a new alternator. It's the Lexus I picked up in Florida. So I did. Martin's cracking up over there. Yeah, there you go. Susie, my wife, driving that big thing. Yeah, she loves driving the truck. Kids don't. A little bit intimidating, but Scott Allen sounds like the makings of a good country song. Well, you can take my woman, but don't touch my itty bitty bottle of wine. My dog's at home, the kids are gone, wife run off with my truck. I'll stop there.
All right, we're getting close.
Of course we are.
And 30.
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back inside the Armed American Radio Daily Defense, gunbroker.com studios on this Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone. Every bit of it presented by X. Quick shout out to all of our partners that make it possible every day now. Lead Slingers Whiskey. Brad was here on the program yesterday. LeadSlingersWhiskey.com. Second Amendment Foundation, really, SAF.org. I mean, now a grand prize winner coming up in my newest promotion is going to become a life member of the SAF on my dime. I'm going to pay for that and some other things. That's coming up. We'll make the announcement as we're going to coincide it with the relaunch of the new website. So hopefully it's the latter part of this week, could be next week. MyPillow.com, please use the promo code AAR. I don't know what else to tell you, but it is really it's just sticking it in the craw of the left. And, you know, not long after we got off the air, when I mentioned some of the businesses that bailed on MyPillow, CVS bailed and a couple more. It is disgusting what is happening out there with this leftist cancel culture. So what do? You stick it right back in their face. And I like to have fun with it. If you got an anti-gun lefty, I don't know, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, whoever it is, buy them a MyPillow. Use the promo code AAR and smile when you go to sleep at night, counting rounds and counting ammo, knowing that they're sleeping on everything that they hate, and you paid for it. And it's a beautiful thing, and Armed American Radio supported it, and that's a wonderful thing, because they're supporting the right to bear arms when they sleep on that pillow, or the dog bed, or anything else. Please support MyPillow through this. It's just remarkable. David Hogg now involved. That little punk? Come on, man. Oh, geez, it's just mind-boggling where we're at today. Car Arms, North American Arms. Defender Coffee, the promo code is AAR. And as I told you before, frontsight.com/Mark. Doesn't cost you a thing. Funny how that works. Doesn't cost you a thing, and it supports Armed American Radio, just like going to gunbroker.com and signing up for free. And it doesn't cost you a thing, and it supports Armed American Radio. Those are all the things that we can do to help keep this voice on the air in what is going to be a very dangerous next 2 years. Front Sight, by the way, Ignatius Piazza hopefully will be here over the weekend. In fact, I'm pretty sure he is. I think it'll take a miracle to get him off the air this coming weekend. All right, Andrew Branca, Law of Self-Defense. Let's I got a number of different places I want to go with you. I want to put an exclamation point on the Kyle Rittenhouse deal, because I'm of the mindset that this just can't be happening, that this kid is clearly going to get away. I'm hearing he's got a great judge. That's awesome. But his family is probably going to be ruined in the process. He's young enough, he'll get his life back, hopefully. Hopefully he'll be successful with some lawsuits when he gets away from this. I don't know. But my gosh, go ahead and just put your final stamp on that before we move on to some of your stuff you've written.
Well, the most encouraging thing here is the judge that he's gotten for his trial, and a very old school nuts and bolts judge. It looks like he's going to demand that the prosecution stay within the bounds of the law and the evidence and criminal procedure. And I think if Kyle Rittenhouse gets a legitimately fair trial, the prospects of him getting convicted are very, very, very low. Never zero. The risk is always more than zero, folks, but very low. So that's extremely positive. If he had gotten a more loosey-goosey judge who was more amenable to the prosecutor's political persuasiveness, this could be a disaster of a trial for him. Certainly in the Zimmerman case, for example, the trial judge there was very, very favorable to the prosecution. Almost every ruling she made was favorable to the prosecution, extremely biased, in my opinion. Here it looks like we have a much more reasonable judge, and that is again, I mentioned the trial court. The purpose of the trial court is to act as a filter between the heat and rage of the outside world and the legal process we're entitled to under the U.S. Constitution. And it looks like this judge is going to ensure that Kyle Rittenhouse gets that proper legal process. And that's fantastic.
That's great news to hear from him. And I got to point out, too, in the Zimmerman case, when it was all said and done, a mixed-race jury acquitted him. And by the way, for all of you, of every charge, he was acquitted by a mixed-race jury under Florida law, but the media doesn't want to tell you that. And if you read the transcripts and go back and look at it, you can actually see the facts for yourself. He had every right to do what he did. God bless him. The other issue relative to that particular trial was there was no stand your ground invoked ever. I mean, the media lies about this and the Zimmerman case are unbelievable, that it was never a stand your ground case. His Mark O'Meara and the rest of his team, never once did they invoke stand your ground. Not one time. It never came up. All right.
I watched every minute. I watched every minute of that Zimmerman trial, and stand your ground was not said once.
Not one time. Was never brought up as a defense. It wasn't even asked for pre-trial. And he had a right to. He didn't need to. Self-defense was on his side. Car thief, now, this is like a happy ending story to me from something I would read from AAR Hawkins. Car thief gets a bullet to the head, and shooter gets a very favorable decision from the DA, February 12, 2021. This is from the lawofselfdefense.com. What does that mean?
Yeah, so that's one of our blog posts for our most of the content we produce every week is for members. We do have a free podcast we do every Thursday. That people can find that at lawofselfdefense.com/free podcast. That's the only open access content we produce every week. Most of our content is for our members, but membership's dirt cheap, folks, at Law of Self-Defense. It's about $0.25 a day. But that particular story is about a guy who drove a car for his boss. He was getting the car cleaned up at a car wash, and a thief just stepped into the car as it was being dried off and started driving it away. And the driver placed himself in front of the vehicle and tried to compel the thief to stop, and then had to jump out of the way. And the vehicle was being driven right at him, at the driver. So the driver drew his lawfully carried pistol, fired a shot at the car thief, struck him in the head. The bullet, killed the car thief. The car thief then careened off into a building where obviously he was dead already from the bullet to the head. But the timing of the shooting was such that a prosecutor could have gone hard line on this. So when the driver made the decision to draw his pistol and shoot, the car was coming at him. When he actually fired the shot, however, the car was going by him, next to him. So technically, in that moment when he fired the shot, the car was going past him and not any longer a threat. But the prosecutor in this particular case said, nope, we're going to go with the shooter on this one. The car was being stolen. It was moments before an imminent deadly force threat against the driver. We're going to call this shoot a good one. The reason I wrote about that was as a cautionary tale. This driver got a good decision from the DA. He's not going to be prosecuted. But a different DA could have made a different decision in this case, put him to the test at trial, and caused him a lot of financial ruin.
Miami-Dade, Florida, by the way, where this was. So when I say that because people think politically, would it have been different had it been, but this was favorable. This was favorable. And that split second made all the difference. You know, and again, this invokes that bizarre question. You got a favorable ruling, but a different DA could. There should be the same parameters in real life.
And by the way,
but
I should mention it took the DA 2 years to release this decision. So for 2 years, this driver didn't know if he might be prosecuted for murder.
Imagine that. I had a guy on the show that was with me in down at the WGKA station. It took a 12-month deal before he shot in self-defense as he and his girlfriend were attacked walking out to their car. They were jumped.
Or 60.
It took the DA in Atlanta 12 months to decide not to prosecute him. I wouldn't bring him on the show until the decision was made, and then we brought him on the program. Andrew Branca, The Law of Self-Defense. It is lawofselfdefense.com. Thank you, Andrew. I promise I'm going to get a ton of email. Thanks for everything you do, and thanks for coming on the show today. Always compelling, riveting stuff when you're on the program. Good stuff, folks.
Anytime, Mark.
You got it, man. Thank you, Andrew. That is fun stuff. We need to bring Andrew on. Oh, it's really good. Really, really compelling and fun stuff to talk to with the attorney, the experts in these cases, because you can go either way on these things. We're going to get up and do it again tomorrow because they don't want me to.
20.
So here's how I'm going to leave it with you. Carry on, carry often, carry absolutely everywhere. Never leave your cave without your club. No self-respecting caveman would ever do that because his cave woman wanted him home. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.
Oh, fun stuff.
Another hour flew by.
Yeah, it certainly did. Oh man, those are fun topics to talk about. You could get legal in these conversations for hours and hours and hours. Just the theory behind it. is really
Yep.
something to talk about. Like when he made the comment that, I want you to think about this, another prosecutor, another DA could have made a different decision. Well, that shouldn't be, in real life, it shouldn't be that way. That another DA should be able to make another decision. It should be based on this is what happened, period. There is no other decision to make. But there is.
I guess it depends on if your district attorney is Kamala Harris or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, by the way, if Republicans take the House back, Biden and her are going to be impeached. You watch, mark my words.
I don't believe they're going to take the House back.
I think they will. You just stop it right there. You shut up, you. You stop it, you.
After what I saw in November and January, I don't believe there'll be another fair election in my lifetime.
You don't say bad word. You stop it right there. You stop it. You don't say bad word. No. You don't say bad word.
I'm not going to say the bad word. I just know what the intent is.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Fucking guy.
Anyways, man, I am getting off here so I can go home.
All right, go home. Take care of the dog. God bless you. I was going to try to keep you on here for as long as I could just to mess with your head. You do need to go. You need to get out. Go. Get out.
All right, man. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you later. Bye. Ooh, that's fun stuff with the attorney on there, isn't it? Always fun. Scott says, every time I hear Andrew speak, I feel more educated, yet more uneasy. That's the point. And that's exactly why X insurance is so important, by the way, guys. I'm not kidding you. If you have what you think you have is insurance, I want you to go look at the policy, what you have in legal liability. Forget this bogus up to $2 million coverage and all that. That's not what you're concerned with. You're concerned with your legal liability and staying out of prison. That's what you're concerned with. Because here's something that will blow your mind. You can't be sued for more than you have, okay? You can't. So you have to be very cognizant of that. But civilly, by the way. But what you're concerned about is your legal liability protection. I've got 100, 250, 500. 100,000, 250, 500,000. Check what you have. And when you find out you don't have anywhere near that, visit xinsurance.com and get a real insurance quote from a real insurance carrier that will write a real policy in your name. I'm just saying, when you talk to Andrew and you hear the things he's talking about, man, oh man, oh man. All right, guys, I'm out. God bless you. It's a Monday, long day. Get the podcast up for you. See you on the radio tomorrow. Oh, you know who's going to be here tomorrow? Ooh, who's going to be here tomorrow? Skip Coryell is going to be here. Longtime friend. He's the guy that put together the first Second Amendment March 2010 in Washington, D.C., and he is also a publisher and just an all-around great guy and also a talk radio host. So we'll see him on the radio tomorrow. It's going to be a fun show.